is that supposed to happen? Worlds where villains win are more common than you think. In everything from cartoons to literature, sometimes even heroes are destined to fall. And when they do, villains rise to shape realms into landscapes of their hate. When I was a kid, the first time I saw a villain win was when I was watching Cyberchase, and the big bad of the series, Hacker, had taken over the kids' headquarters and erased their mentor motherboard, casting all of cyberspace into darkness. Even though this was just a kids' show, I was absolutely terrified. When villains win, they are free to destroy all life, bend civilization to their will, or even save the world? It's complicated. Why do we sometimes root for evil to triumph over good? What happens when all is lost and the villain manages to take over the world? What happens when the villain wins? Spoilers ahead for these pieces of media. The first possible outcome when a villain wins is desolation. Somewhere in the vast cosmos is a universe that has grown quiet. Once a land of colorful princesses, endless parties, and adventure has now become a place of no songs, no sounds. Just a wasteland of sand where all life has been eradicated. In this world, the Lich won. In Adventure Time, the Lich is one of the primary villains that Finn and Jake face. The Lich has one goal: destroy all life. Time and time again, he's worked to bring ruin upon the world of Ooh through a variety of ways. Thankfully, however, he never succeeds in wiping life out, except in this timeline. In the spin-off series Fionna and Cake, we explore this world where every organic life form is dead. The only denizens of this empty world are robots like Bimo. When villains win, the world itself is transformed by their malice. The Lich wanted nothing more but to exterminate life. So the world we see is devoid of life, color, movement. But in the accomplishment of this grand goal, we find something strange about this version of the Lich. At the end of everything, the Lich made the world empty. And it has made him empty in return. Without any more foes to vanquish, the Lich sits on a throne of skulls. Later, when the heroes of this world meet the Lich for the first time and expect to be killed, he cackles, shares a flare of his usual menace, but returns to his quietness. Simon Petrikov even remarks that the Lich must be depressed. A villain's goal is integral to their every meaning. But once that goal of destroying everyone is accomplished, what is there left to hold the Lich together? Later, when the heroes and the Lich enter another realm to face the Chaos God Golb, Lich is finally face to face with his master. The Lich, known as the last scholar of Golb, suddenly begins to beg, plead, and pray. The Lich says he has found no satisfaction at the end of his goal. He begs for reasons, goals, some sort of meaning to his world, but Golb does not respond. Foolishly, the Lich never realized that destroying all life was in direct opposition to the will of Golb, a chaos god. The Lich enforced a silent order of death, destroying any chance for life's entropy to please Golb. So Golb decides to simply turn the Lich into a strange piece, floating in the abyss for eternity. There's a somewhat similar fate that awaits one version of the Mad Titan Thanos. If you followed the MCU in its glory days, you know that in Avengers Infinity War, Thanos actually won. The heroes of that universe failed to stop him from using the Infinity Gauntlet's cosmic power to get rid of half of all life. With this goal accomplished, Thanos pieced off to a distant world and enjoyed his retirement playing real-life Stardew Valley. Eventually, his snap would be undone, but in the end, he still managed to win for a time and exert his will upon reality. In the MCU, Thanos was delusional, but genuinely believed that reducing the population would create a utopia for those who remained. In the comics, Thanos is a bit different. His core reason for trying to exterminate all life? It's just to please his love, Death, a woman who is the personified embodiment of death in the Marvel Universe. In the comic miniseries Thanos Wins, we see him almost completely achieve that goal. In this universe, King Thanos is able to kill not only the Avengers, but all life forms and even the Celestials. He grows immortal, reigning over a desolate husk of the universe as all life fades away. He has essentially won, with no one to stop him, and spends millions of years reigning over nothing. Yet, death never really comes to hold him or share her love with him. He grows old and weary, and after all that he has sacrificed to achieve this goal, he is still nothing but lonely and empty. Finally, he figures out that he must die in order to join his lover Death. Thus, he uses time travel to bring back his past younger self to come and kill him. After an intense battle between the two, Death appears. But the young Thanos eventually sees that his future version has become weak and pleading due to his success. Young Thanos leaves, promising to never become the old man that future Thanos is. Because of this, reality shifts and the timeline begins to be erased from existence. After everything King Thanos did, all his victorious annihilation, Death still refused him. He would be erased, never to truly die and feel her embrace. He really fumbled a goth baddie. In both the Lich and King Thanos' stories, these villains achieve their goals but find that it leads to nothing but hollowness. Even a villain's destruction of all life means nothing in the face of an unpredictable universe. It especially means nothing in the face of uncaring gods. But perhaps this quiet desolation is better than one of the alternatives. Is it better to be killed by a villain and rest peacefully, or to live in a world where the villain's will infects all that there is, corrupting society? Dystopias are some of fiction's most cruel stories of villainous victory, and they're quite common. From literary classics like 1984 to futuristic settings like Night City from Cyberpunk, every dystopian world reflects a reality where some kind of villainous force or institution managed to win. The second outcome when a villain wins is control. In 1984, a totalitarian government twists history and controls every aspect of its citizens' lives, all under the gaze of the cult of personality, Big Brother. Even in a cartoon like Phineas and Ferb, there are a couple realities where Dr. Heinz Doofenshmirtz manages to defeat Perry the Platypus and take over the tri-state area. And it gets surprisingly dark.
Actually, children themselves were child-proofed and stored away until adulthood.
There are dozens of dystopias throughout fiction, but one that I feel really displays the generational horror of the genre is from Avatar. No, not that one. And definitely not that one. There is no movie in Ba Sing Se. Speaking of, there is no war in Ba Sing Se. Ba Sing Se, the capital of the Earth Kingdom, is a massive city walled off from the rest of the world. While at first it appears like a powerful yet peaceful hub, its king is nothing but a puppet, controlled by the Dai Li, a villainous secret police. In The Last Airbender, Aang found himself at odds with the Dai Li as he found out about their lies, brainwashing, and ruthless military dictatorship. Eventually, the main leader of the Dai Li was defeated, so Aang carried on throughout the rest of the series to face the Fire Lord and save the world. Yet, a lifetime later, in The Legend of Korra, the Dai Li was still an active force, serving a corrupt queen with her own cult of personality. Even the Avatar could not easily stop this corruption. Class warfare had only grown. The wealthy lived in luxury while the poor lived in fear. When the walls of Ba Sing Se came crashing down and the queen was assassinated, the city was cast into looting and violence. It would take a long period of reconstruction to shape the ruins of this dictatorship into something new. Where did this evil even come from, though? Well, reincarnations before Korra and Aang, it was in fact Avatar Kyoshi who created the Dai Li. They would be silent, precise, and feared by all. After riots that had happened, Kyoshi intended to create a force to preserve Ba Sing Se's culture. But she had no idea the corruption that would spread when such an elite political force was molded. Why do we include such terrible worlds in even the cartoons we watch? Well, psychology tells us that dystopic tales have a purpose. Visualizing worst-case scenarios is called defensive pessimism, a tactic that traces its roots in stoicism, used to alleviate anxiety and put real life in perspective. Thus, the grimness of Ba Sing Se or 1984 works to make our own real world a little more manageable, pushing us to not let fictional histories repeat. Meanwhile, Cyberpunk's Night City portrays a different kind of villainous domination, one where corporations rule over a capitalist, cybernetic hellscape. In Cyberpunk Edgerunners, we watch a kid named David try to get by in a megacity in a ruined future of America. At every turn, Night City tries to chew him up. Gang wars flood the streets, The populace turns to drugs to drown out pain and invasive cybernetics to warp their bodies. Meanwhile, transnational corporations like Arasaka and Militech fight their greedy wars, exploiting citizens, not caring who dies in the crossfire. When David loses his only family, he decides to become an Edgerunner, a black market mercenary fighting gangs, corps, and just trying to survive. He gains control of Sandevistan, which is essentially badass bullet time super speed. He gets along with a crew of other mercenaries, and he dates a girl named Lucy and dreams of going to the moon with her. Sounds great, right? If only it ended there. Despite everything he works towards, in the end, David is doomed. One by one, his gang is picked off in battles or by an affliction called cyberpsychosis. When David relies on his tech too much, he begins to lash out violently as cyberpsychosis takes over. His squad is backstabbed by one of their own team members, and the series ends with a fight against Atom Smasher, a notorious killing machine who manages to kill David. In the end, David made a lot of cash, and his death saved Lucy, who goes on to visit the moon. But even up there in the beauty, she only has the memory of her lover, and is forever haunted by the countless losses. It's an absolutely devastating ending, as the bloodthirsty Atom Smasher gets away scot-free, and almost all of her favorite characters die tragic deaths. But in the end, Night City itself is the true villain of this show. The city is inherently inhospitable. It's overpopulated and oversaturated with advertisements and hostile architecture. No matter how hard people try to fight the corruption, it ends up corrupting them instead. People who choose to stay here chase their dreams, but are destined to be devoured. The only way to survive is to cheat, steal, or become a monster. But even that only gets you so far. The city's more akin to something eldritch and infectious rather than just being a plain old setting. There's a saying, the only way to leave Night City is in a body bag. Sadly, it's almost completely true. Dismantling an institution is never as simple as a hero slaying a villainous dragon. The dystopia is more akin to a hydra. For every vicious head slain, 2 more pop out. Villain-run worlds fester and rot, trapping unlucky heroes inside a cancerous spread of corruption and control. These worlds are terrible, but what if a villain managed to win, take over, and actually make the world a better place? Is that possible? In the 2008 special, Powerpuff Girls Rule, the key to the world is sent to Townsville, and the Powerpuff Girls must fight off hordes of villains to protect it. But after nearly successfully keeping it safe, the key is promptly stolen by the girl's nemesis, Mojo Jojo. And now that he has the key, he can finally control the world and do what he has always wanted. End world hunger, cure all diseases, and give everyone free puppies. Huh. While Mojo Jojo has always seemed intent on ruling with a terrible iron fist, he actually becomes a benevolent ruler, and the world becomes much better for it. The Powerpuff Girls themselves are shocked but grateful. Who knew that to fix everything, you just needed to put an evil chimp in charge? As beautiful as this Utopia was, Mojo Jojo quickly gets bored of the peace and stirs up more violence instead. While this moment is played for laughs, it is a fascinating thought. What if villains actually have the right idea? And if they could just win once, things would become better. Supervillains have incredible abilities, and if these megalomaniacs weren't driven by pure evil, maybe they could be hyper-focused on efficiently resolving the troubles of mankind. Returning to Marvel, no villain knows how to rule as well as Dr. Victor Von Doom. Dr. Doom is one of the most fearsome villains of Marvel, a tech genius, sorcerer, and of course the sovereign ruler of Latveria, a fictional Eastern European country. Despite his evil metal mask and domineering personality, Latveria is strangely pretty well off in most iterations. Before Doom ruled, Latveria was impoverished. Now, due to his efforts, it's implied that Latveria has universal education, healthcare, and futuristic technology that puts it at the top of the world's economy. It's a world superpower, and many of its citizens are happy to live in the nation, despite losing many freedoms. When villains win, we are forced to question what kind of society we want to live in, and how far we'd go to create it. Would you live in Latveria and sacrifice your freedoms if it meant stability and welfare? Does even a mad scientist chimp deserve the chance to try to create world peace? Every villainous victory has a purpose in the grand scheme of the narrative. Hollow victories prove the villain wrong, and dystopias give protagonists a unique setting to rise against. However, villainous victories don't only impact the fiction, but they also impact us. Villainous victories puppeteer our emotions. There are three main ways. First, it's through the art of cliffhangers. Villain victories are not always total, and narratives use temporary victories to pull viewers to the edge of our seats. Even though the Lich, King Thanos, or Mojo Jojo reigned, they were eventually consumed by more powerful forces. Like I mentioned earlier, I was horrified as a kid when a Cyberchase episode ended with the hacker taking over. This was a show that taught kids multiplication and starred 3 kids and a robotic bird traveling on a silly adventure. And they always won. Until the Season 3, Episode 9, Snellfu Snafu Part 1, when Hacker finally tricked the heroes and hacked Motherboard. As a kid, this was the first time I'd even realized evil could actually triumph, and the first time I'd seen a to be continued sign appear to taunt me. When we're little, the world is simple and stories are straightforward. Heroes work hard and defeat the villains. Of course, this episode was a Part 1, and in Part 2, Hacker was in fact defeated. Yet, in the experience of watching him laugh at the heroes, rendered in that same clunky 3D CGI style that only Motherboard was allowed to be, it haunts me. Villain wins are a very common cliffhanger trope throughout shows, meant to drum up the suspense and raise the stakes for the heroes. When all seems lost, that's when the best drama really happens. In a show with one of my favorite villains, Gravity Falls shows a piece of what would happen if a certain interdimensional dream Dorito won. Apocalyptic madness would be wrought upon the world, an endless party would be unleashed. The multi-part finale allows Bill to take control of the whole town, making the Pines twins' underdog rise against him all the more satisfying and epic. Eventually, his defeat is set in stone. Villain victories serve a necessary narrative function, building the hero up and suspending us from episode to episode. Secondly, villain victories also round out the emotional experience of storytelling, supplementing highs with extreme lows such as in horror. So many horror movies end with the survivors being seemingly safe, until BAM! The villain comes back from the dead to slash one last time. These genre-specific wins play with our emotions and help build the rollercoaster of adrenaline we come to expect from horror films. I remember feeling the tension and horror when Hacker won, or when Thanos defeated the Avengers in Infinity War. The entire theater and much of the atmosphere of the Marvel fandom at the time was impacted by a sense of loss and deep surprise. While fiction is chiefly a form of escapism, it also allows us to explore emotions beyond the positive. Thirdly, alongside cliffhangers and horror, another emotion that can be created through a villain's win is sympathy. There are stories where heroes ultimately win, yet villains succeed in revealing something about the world that the hero must accept. These are moral victories that shake both the hero and the audience, forcing us to see the world in a new light. A notable example of this is Killmonger from the MCU, who uses excessive violence but has a sympathetic motivation, wanting to free Africans and African Americans from injustice around the world. There are endless antagonists with sympathetic motivations. Perhaps someone should make a video about that. Shameless plug aside, villain wins don't only impact the fictional worlds they happen in, but they also reach out to puppeteer the audience directly into fear, sorrow, and a taste of madness. Speaking of an audience's madness, one of the darkest villain wins I've ever seen is not from any comic or show, but from a short browser game called We Become What We Behold. There aren't supervillains or mad gods, but the villainy in this game strikes directly at your core. It's a free 5-minute game that you could honestly go play right now. Go check out the link in the description, play it, and then head back here. Go ahead. In We Become What We Behold, you enter a peaceful world of square and circle people. You aren't really a character, but instead just control a lens to take pictures of the world and present it on a large TV. The game bids you to take pictures of interesting moments. First, you take a pic of a new fashion trend, hats. But then that becomes old news, so instead you take a picture of a screaming square passing by. Now that's newsworthy. But that pic spreads and begins making circles uneasy around squares. Take a picture of that apprehension and soon squares are distrusting circles. You can try to take pictures of the peaceful couple, but the game will refuse to progress if you do. The world wants to watch conflict. Thus, things will spiral as the media pushes anger and fear into the world. Soon the world is full of screaming division as shapes clash. Until something draws everyone's attention. When the literal shot is fired by the mustached madman, chaos follows. People take advantage of the disorder that spreads and resort to violence. And you can't help but keep taking pictures of the horror show. The news tells us all to be angry, be afraid. In this game, you are the villain who wins. Blame is shared between the violent mobs, the gunmen, the TV's inflammatory subtitles, yeah, for sure. But you wield the lens. You choose to keep clicking. The violence that occurs is spawned by you and your media machine of escalating emotions. By wielding the camera, you are complicit in bringing the society to ruin. The audience wanted a show, right? We as an audience are driven to watch conflict. We root for vicious villains and violence in shows. We rubberneck at accidents on highways, give in to panic and hysteria. It is, after all, our minds that construct dystopias, weave these tales of torture. We are the mad gods who think up worlds where villains win. I'm not trying to argue that good should always prevail in fiction and that villain victories are a bad thing. It is important to tell stories of all kinds, of all outcomes, and of all emotions. Fiction should be free to explore outcomes where things go bad, because from those possibilities, we learn to build a better society. But it is important to be conscious of the fiction we create, the media we consume, and the villains we decide to root for. Life inspires the art we make, but art can also inspire the ways we live. From these tragic stories, we shouldn't fall into hopelessness or fear. Instead, we must develop a sense of defiance and determination to make sure villains only win in fiction and not in the world we live in today. Antagonists and villains are so fascinating, and if you want to hear more about them, watch What Happens When the Villain is Right Next. Or if you want to hear more about the Lich's crazy lore, check out this video instead.